I almost got Brayden being ridiculous. All right, we're talking about forgiveness. And of course, if you know my husband, he pulls up the Just Friends song where she sings forgiveness in that horrendous voice. We look really... We look... Stop. We look really sunburned. We just got back from a walk. All right, guys, what's up? We want to talk about forgiveness today. So there's a lot... Hi, Katie. There's obviously a lot going on in the world right now, I think, with some forgiveness for ourselves, for government, for what other people are doing. There can be a lot of healing right now. But what we want to talk about with forgiveness, you guys, is like how to actually move through it in a way that's healing and that feels good, and that feels in alignment, and versus just being like, well, I have to forgive this because, right? So actually understanding what the energetic shifts are when you do.
I will never forgive this.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Or what happens when we get when we get in that mode. So we're gonna give you guys some tips and tools on how to actually forgive, whether that's yourself, someone else, etc. It's all the same process, so that we can start to find some healing in these times of struggle and strife.
So, Courtney and I were talking about this as we were walking, and it brought back a little bit of reminiscing for both of us, but I know for myself of when we're talking about just different times in our lives when these have played roles. And I think you're seeing that a lot right now of people's maybe prior experiences or prior references are coming to the forefront, and they're expressing them in different ways, right? Like they're holding different interactions, different whatever, and they're seeing this as maybe their opportunity to express those things in good, bad, or indifferent, right? And so when we're talking about forgiveness, you guys, is it's an aspect that I think for myself, it allowed me to set myself free from a lot of different things, a lot of different weight that I was holding onto myself, right? Like, for me, carrying around a lot of that anger and rage and all these things that I tend to do when I'm experiencing certain things is just an external load that I'm holding upon myself, that once allowed myself to let go of and make peace with, allowed me to actually see the world from a different perspective, and at the same time understand that that was just an anchor holding me down, right? Because really, more times than not, what we've experienced for ourselves, but also what we see with our clients, is more times that people are unable to move forward and succeed in the realm that they want to. It's usually because they're tying an anchor of their past to themselves, right? Is because their past is actually holding them back than allowing them to go forward, right? Like your past is your experience, your reference, your learning, your teacher, but oftentimes we hold on to those things because they turn into our identity, they turn into a lot of different senses for us, and there's almost the fear of, well, if I let that go, I'm going to lose this, right? Like, because we see that with a lot of athletes. Like I did that forever. You hear that with Tom Brady all the time, right? Like if he doesn't allow himself to let go that he was the 6th round pick and everything else, that's his edge. That's his thing that keeps him going. And perhaps in ways it is, but there are also, I guarantee, other components to him that allow him to strive to be the best version of himself that he can. Because if it's just that one thing, sooner or later, there's going to be a lot of anger. There's going to be a lot of just discomfort, a lot of blocks that come along with that, as opposed to really finding things that move you forward. Because yet again, we will run towards gunfire for love. We will go the other way from it for fear, right?
And well, in that example, like that's living from fear, right? That's being motivated by fear, and that's being like unwilling to forgive. And what I think is really important is that what we need to understand about forgiveness is, like, forgiveness is not about acceptance. It has nothing to do with the other person. It has nothing to do with the scenario. All forgiveness has to do with is the energy in which you are robbing from yourself by choosing not to forgive. Okay, so if you think about this, we have so much energy that we can send to different places in our life. If you are anchored, like Brandon said, if you are anchored to something that is not serving you, you are sending energy to that, whether you realize it or not, right? If you think about something and you get an emotional charge, it is still pulling energy from you that could be going somewhere else.
It's like currency. Think
right.
of it in a way of, just like money, right? Like, yeah. You only have so much energy dollars per day to spend.
Right. And so if this energy is going to places that are non-ideal and places that are not serving you and things that don't take you to the best version of yourself, then it's not doing you any good, right? And so what I want you guys to understand about forgiveness is like there's different parts right now. So forgiving yourself for most people is harder, right? Like forgiving yourself because you're like, well, shoulda, coulda, woulda, why didn't I? Should have been smarter than that, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter, right? Like, but when you can forgive your past self, when you can forgive experiences, when you can find grace, when you can find learning in that, and then cut the cord with that and actually say, you know what? Like I was doing the best that I could in that moment, and blame, shame, guilt, none of those things are serving me. And then figure out how to move through that, right? Whether it's brain dumping, whether it's meditating on it, whatever it is. Like I have a cord cutting meditation if you guys want one, where it literally has you physically like visualize cutting the cord with that experience, right? But if you're forgiving someone else, so many times people are like, but what they did was really wrong. And it probably was, right? Like it doesn't matter the scenario, whether it was right, whether it was wrong, who was in the right or wrong, but it's understanding that that emotional tie is still connected and it's bringing you down, right? And so even if you don't know it is, think about if there's something that, if you think about it, it causes an emotional charge. If that was to be removed from your life, where in your life could you send positive energy that would be beneficial to your life, to the people around you, to all of that kind of stuff? So it's understanding that it's the fact that you're giving your emotion to something that doesn't serve you, and you want to claim back that energy so that you can redirect it to a place, to a person, to situations where you're coming from a place of love and where you're actually moving yourself and your world in the right direction. Good.
So I think, you know, I'm going to paraphrase this a little bit, but, you know, especially in this time frame, what we're working through right now is you're seeing, I think, a lot of different emotions coming around the subject of race, the subject of prejudice, all these things that we're dealing with right now. I mean, we've been dealing with these things for hundreds of years, so it's not like a new topic, but you're seeing it come to the forefront right now, obviously on a societal form. But, you know, I think it was Nelson Mandela, right? And so he was incarcerated unjustly for, I think, over 20 years, right? Like, and there was a lot of racial aspects surrounding that and everything else. And so when he was asked of how he was able to overcome that on a sense of peace, right? And I think that's like, he's a great example because yet again, like what he went through of literally being incarcerated for over 20 years and being locked away for something that he didn't do, but based off his race, and then coming out of that to basically lead his country to a place that they've never been able to experience before. His statement surrounding that, when asked of, well, how are you able to forgive? And his statement, and yet again, I'm paraphrasing this, was essentially, me holding on to rage and resentment is like drinking poison and expecting my enemies, I don't think you call them enemies, but expecting my enemies to die, right? And it's understanding that all that poison, all that anger, all that fear, all the things that we're doing is poison to ourselves, right? Like when I'm angry, depressed, all these things, like, I mean, I look back of 4 years ago when I was at a heightened state of feeling uncertain, feeling angry, feeling all these things surrounding our business. I literally felt like poison was running through my veins. Like I hurt, my body hurt. I slept all the time. I was achy. I was angry. I was very temperamental, but all I was doing was poisoning myself by my thoughts, my emotions, all the things that I was projecting to the people that we were dealing with surrounding our business. And so it had to come to this state of finally understanding that I need to forgive this scenario and yet again, expand my understanding of what is going on, right? Because my viewpoint at the time was these people are trying to take something from me. They're trying to, run us out. They're trying to kick us out. They're trying to, bankrupt us. They're trying to do all the stories that were playing through my head, what was going on, and it was causing nothing but turmoil in my life that was affecting everyone else around me. So instead, I by now seeing it like, you know what, they have a business to run, we have business to run, we need to, maybe this is an opportunity for us to live into something that we never thought or imagined that we could create, and maybe this is our time to step up, right? And so I think when we can come from a place of forgiveness, it's not just for, yet again, just like recording you talking about, it's not forgiving the person or the thing or whatever it is. It's allowing you to actually move yourself forward because those are the things that are restricting you.
Yeah. Well, and I think, again, it's understanding that, like, it's about your energy and your peace and your sanity, right? And, like, I feel like right now there's so much of the world is just spinning in, like, those people shouldn't be doing this and these people shouldn't be doing this and why is the government doing this and why, and like take a minute, right? Find some breath and go, okay, well, like how is focusing on those things serving me, right? And like if you feel very connected to any of these things, like what part do you need to forgive, and what part, like where can you forgive yourself, where can you forgive those people, where can you find grace, where can you start to move through it from a place of love and a place of compassion, and how can you understand that when you forgive, when you move through it, when you see grace, when you learn from it, everything that happens in life, it happens in a way of growth, right? Or you can choose to live in those lower vibrating emotions. You can choose not to forgive. You can choose to just to see one side of every story, and it's going to keep you stuck, right? And for most of us, like we have a lot of stuff we can forgive for ourselves first, right? Whether it's something you did yesterday, whether it's something you did, you know, weeks ago, months ago, years ago. I know on my personal journey when I was going through all the eating disorder stuff, like I have had so much dental work done and lost teeth and root canals and all this stuff in the last couple years to not hundreds of thousands of dollars, but like 20 grand worth of dental work because of throwing up for so many years, right? And I really had to go through and forgive that because I was so mad at myself. I was so bitter. I was like, how could I be so dumb? How can I do that? But once I learned that, like, I can't go back and change that. It is who I am. It's taken me where I am, and I just have to forgive myself for that. There is this huge relief of like, okay, I can't go change the past, but I can forgive what had happened, and I can take that energy and serve it somewhere else, right? And so for me, when I was able to forgive myself for all those things, those just negative things I did towards my own body, that I could take that knowledge and I could take that love and I could shift it to you guys, and I could teach other people, and I could show other people how to get from that place to the other side of it. So think about, you know, if you're not in a place where you can forgive other people right now, is how can you forgive yourself, right? What is something that you really want to release? Literally, you can do a simple, just get into your body, take some breaths, and imagine something that you know is sort of anchoring you down. Imagine seeing it, right? Like imagine yourself connected to the rope. Bring it closer to you, bring the feelings that come with it, and then allow yourself to just let go of the rope, right? And literally let it float away in your mind and see what that feels like, right? Because that's the other thing, is that forgiveness is in your body. It's a feeling. It's not a thought. Oh yeah, I forgive them. That's not it, right? Like if you still have an emotional connection to it, that's the part you need to feel. So you need to actually feel love and gratitude and bring those things in as you release that energy and let it go. And I promise if you make this a daily practice, you will have so much more empathy and compassion and understanding for what's going on in the world and for yourself, that it will really start to shift everything in your life.
Would you say, and I think one thing that when we talk about our shift program, you guys, is we've really, the whole basis of it is understanding that every aspect of our life affects other aspects of our lives, right? And so would you say that if during that time frame when you were going through that, if you were having a hard time maybe forgiving somebody else or forgiving an event or whatever, do you feel like that restriction to forgive also came from another area in your life that you were neglecting to forgive on? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, and a lot of times, you guys, forgiveness is one of those things that, like, it takes practice. For most of us, it's not like, oh, I'm just going to forgive that and move on, right? And so it's understanding that, like Brayden said, like, I was in a place with food where everything was restricted, which restricted everything else in my life. It restricted abundance, it restricted happiness, it restricted forgiveness. Like, I lived in a state of lack and restrictiveness. And so when I let that go, it was also easier to learn how to forgive. And I think for me, it was learning. It was a practice. And I work with, we work with our clients on this too, of like, it's not a one and done. If you have something you really need to forgive, like, you get to do that. And then you probably get to do it again and again and again and again, right? Like, if something's been sitting in your body, if there's been a trauma and something that's happened in your life, it's not going to happen in just one time, right? But as you go through that, like, make it a process of just forgiving something every single day. It starts to become easier, right? And when we get better at gratitude, we get better at forgiveness, right? Because we get to choose which energy do you want to live in. Do you want to live in an energy that's pulling you down and that's low vibe, that's keeping you stuck? Or do you want to live in an energy of the future, right? And like in life, we get to decide, you guys, are you going to be defined by your past and live in it? Or are you going to be drawn to your future and live in that? And when you start to get in that energy and that emotion, it starts to get a lot easier to forgive things and bless them and release them and just move forward.
I know obviously we're talking about a lot about energy and stuff like that. One thing that I think the first book that ever made like an impact on me of going through this, I came across it 5 years ago, randomly. It just kind of an easy way to give a kind of a different idea and a very general, easy to digest sense of, we're talking about energy. Because I think when people hear energy, it's the same thing like that aspect of meditation. Like all of a sudden you start hearing these things, it's like, whoop, way left corner for me, I'm out of here, right? But when you can understand that all we are is energy, right? Like it's that person that walks into the room that you never talked about, but there's something about them that just like has this aura around there of like, I gotta talk to that person, I gotta be around that person, right? Like that's energy in which what we talk about a lot, right? So I highly recommend is a book by John Gordon. It's The Energy Bus, right? Like it's told in story format. Like for me, that's the best way that I tend to learn and grasp a hold of concepts and ideas. If you want, get it on Audible.
It's like 2 hours.
Yeah, it's like a 2-hour book that is super easy to kind of roll through, and it's super easy to digest, and it just kind of goes over some really easy to digest concepts basing around energy, and it gives a lot of examples of different things. And I think for me, that was one of the bigger things that I got, that just kind of open my eyes up to how much these things do actually affect us on a day-to-day basis. One thing I will also say as far as if you're having issues with this, you guys, and because we run into things with our clients of like, well, I just need to have that. I wish I could have this conversation with that person. I wish I could just get this event, get it off my chest, do these things, and I'll wash my hands with it. Well, what if you were unable to have that conversation, right? Like, what if the getting a hold of that person or getting a hold of whatever was no longer on the table? Oftentimes we suggest doing is write a letter, right? Like write a letter or do a voice note or something as if you were actually talking to that person, right? Like write it down and address it to that person and just allow yourself to flow without essentially a filtration on there, right? Like get all that stuff going and moving through that, right? Like another thing that we do, I like to do with, and Courtney was talking about this morning, is essentially an anger release, right? Like especially in times of this, and I've had to do it because yet again, I'm more verbal in my aspect of rage and anger, but I'm also a very physically energetic person that moves things through exercise and those things, but also in the aspect of punching things, hitting things, doing those kind of things, like not breaking stuff, but like what we do with some of our clients who've done on there is literally hang up a punching bag and let them go to town, right? Like bring out a baseball bat. Right, Courtney's had that with her clients. Do use a pool noodle. Yes.
Not a baseball bat.
On a punching bag, not on like your exterior stuff.
So you get a pool noodle on your bed, right? Scream. I mean, there's so much stuff, right, Nate? We can chat with you after this too when we're done. But like releasing it, but more often than not, you guys release it before you have it, right? And if you're in it right now, like you can do that too. But like scream in your car, scream in the shower. Like figure out what actually feels good for you. Like some people don't like the physical part. We both do. So we have a punching bag, and sometimes like we'll say to each other, you just need to go punch. You need to go kick the punching bag. You need to go punch the punching bag. You've got to release that stuff because it's stuck. And we talk about energy. Yeah, when we talk about energy gets stuck. And so if you move it through your body, so if it's stuck in your throat chakra, if it's stuck physically in your body, right? Like how do you get it out of your body? One other thing I'm going to say about this, it sounds like we could have done multiple videos on this, but write the letter to them, get it out, right? And even if you could have the conversation with them, you probably don't need to, right? You probably you need to say the things you want to say. And if there's an apology or there's someone that like you need them to say they're sorry before you can ever move on, write a letter from them to you and then read it. Your brain doesn't know the difference whether it came from them or whether it came from you. So if you write it and you read it out loud to yourself, your body will feel like that apology was actually real, right? It's a crazy thing, but like your brain can't differentiate whether it came from somebody else or whether it came from you. So write the letter from them and let yourself receive it and feel it and then release it. There's so many things. So if this resonates and you guys need more help,
one other thing on that, you guys, is on the side of when we're living from this, this thing won't be receptive to it, right? Because like what Courtney said is forgiveness it's an emotional aspect. It's a sensation that's coming from your body, right? Because how many times have you been in an argument with your spouse, your kids or whatever, and it's like, fine, I forgive you. But 2 weeks later, that surfaces back up and you're like, I thought you forgave me on it. And you're like, well, I really didn't. I was just I said I did, but it really didn't.
The words
right?
I forgive you don't mean anything.
Don't mean anything. So it's, yet again, it's allowing yourself to get out of this and understand that we need to reconnect with this so you can feel the sensations and the conversation between here and here. So that way, when you do actually are able to come from a place of forgiveness, it comes from your soul, not just from your head.
Yeah, I mean, everything we talk about, right? It's mind, body, soul connection. So I know that was a lot. Apparently we should have done multiple videos on this. But if you guys need help, if you need any of that stuff, like I said, I have a meditation. I've got some, PDFs we can give you that will help walk you through this. If you need more guidance on what to do or how to do it, just reach out. We're happy to help. Right now, if the whole world could forgive a little bit more, the world would be a much happier place. So we love you guys. We honor you. We appreciate you. And we'll see you tomorrow.
Forgiveness.
Seriously,
it's more than
when you sang that, yeah, it's more than saying sorry. Go look up that silly song from Just Friends. All right, you guys, we'll see you tomorrow.